Okay, yeah, thank you to Jeremy and One Source Productions for having us here this evening. Um, it's great exposure, and it is hard to get out to see our constituents during this time of COVID. So this is a great opportunity. There's a couple of reasons I would like to have another term on City Council. The first one is I've been appointed to the Sustainability Commission, and we've had a great 6 months working together. We've put forward the opportunity to hire a sustainability coordinator to help the city come up with a long-term plan on sustainability. Where we need to go, we've had a plan in the past that we've, basically met all the objectives, but it's now time to look toward the future. So I've been working very closely with the Sustainability Commission and the subcommittees to put that together, and I would like to continue that work. I think it's been important, and I think we have not only the council, Ori voted for us to move forward on this, but the community in general. That's one thing. Second thing, I've been working closely with many organizations that are trying to solve our problem of homelessness in Elgin, and to have a coordinated solution that meets the needs of all people that are in the situation of homelessness, and right down to some of the people with chronic health conditions and chronic homelessness, all the way up to people that need temporary housing. And I think this is it's just been in this last year that I've been able to work closely with some of those organizations, and I think we have a solution in the near future. So those are a few of the reasons. I also would like to finish working on the police. We're talking about looking overall at what our police department can do better to serve our citizens. A little more than they're doing, though. They've been doing a great job. So those are the three main reasons. I would like to run again, so thanks.
All right. Thank you, Carol. And I am keeping a timer in case you guys are wondering. All right. And next, let's see. Alphabetize. Dixon, you are next. It usually doesn't take me that long.
Yeah, no problem. The reason why I'm running for Elgin City Council again, so re-election here to my second term, is because there's a lot of work that needs to be continued on in these next 4 years. I think that since coming on to the council 4 years ago, we've made some great strides as a city. Carol just hit on couple of those. We talk about things when it comes to the social justice reform. I was able to put forward, and with the support of Carol, the Police Review Task Force to review all policing policies. That's going to be really crucial. Also able to put forward, with the support of Carol and other council members, the Police Review Board that is actually going to be coming up here pretty soon too as well. Other ordinances concerning where an officer lives. So, new officers needing to have to move into our city when they're given a job with the city of Elgin is important, because we want people who are, if you're policing in our community, we want you to live in this community and be neighbors to those who you have to police. There are some exceptions to that, but generally speaking, that's the mind frame. That's a mind frame that we want to have. So for me, a lot of it is social justice reform, and another thing too is sustainability, environmental sustainability. I was driving one of the driving forces behind the East Side Recreational Garden in the Gifford Park neighborhood, and making sure that we secure the space there where it's at, to make sure that community have some green space, and also with that gardening bed, so they can grow whatever it is that they want. So that's sustainability in that neighborhood, which is really huge, and that's actually getting ready to expand for even more beds for that neighborhood. Still, one of the things that's really important to me that I've been working on and pressing over the last few years is homelessness or houselessness. And so I and, others here on this Zoom, as a matter of fact, believe in the Housing First model. And so we're working on things to get that into place. And we've made some great strides in going down that road, because for a long time, the city of Elgin was kicking the can down the road. But I have used my time on the dais and the city council to say I'm tired of talking about it. I'm tired of going around and around in these circles that get us nowhere, and that we need to act, and we need to act quickly at this point. And there are other things too that I've been working on. I'm the interim chair of the Human Relations Commission. I serve on the Liquor Commission. Outside of that, I'm the founder of the annual Elgin Back to School Barbecue Bash. I'm also a board member, Greater Elgin Family Care Center, Alignment for Collaborative for Education, and many other boards and commissions. And so I'm just truly active because I love this community. I love what we're about. I love the direction that we're going into. So I put in the work over these last 4 years. There's no day that goes by that I'm not working on Elgin City Council business. And so I believe that I've earned the trust of voters. And I'm just asking for all of them to come out starting March 22nd, and then for sure on April 6th. So that's why I'm running again. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Good.
Thank you, Jeremy. So mine's a little bit different. I'm not a city council member. However, I have made a previous run at city council. So when I decided to run 2 years ago, obviously it's a big decision. So I couldn't do it without some support within the community. And also my background that I have volunteering in the community gave me that confidence to be able to throw my name in the hat. So, I volunteered in this community for going on a decade now. It's really kicked off in 2011 at ECC. I guess the culmination of that experience was being elected student trustee. So I got to wrap my head around how that organization operates. And then I've spent 5 years on the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee. So that really cemented my knowledge of Elgin. How does the city plan? What do they do to execute that plan? And then what do they do to keep track of it going forward? And then 2019 came around and decided to take the step and run. So I guess 2 years later now, looking back at the platform that we created then, it's more relevant now than it was 2 years ago. So that gives me, I guess, the fuel to do this again. And since then, I'm a blue collar background. I came out as a mechanic out of high school. I've worked in food service, landscaping. I have my associate's degree from ECC. So I think that I have some understanding of the population here in Elgin. Half of my family moved here from another country, speak Spanish. So I feel like I am somewhat representative of the community. And over the last year, I've had a chance to work in, I guess, for lack of a better term, social entrepreneurism and civic innovation. So it's given me a lot of time to be steeped in what's happening in other parts of the country. How does that relate to Elgin? And excited to work with people here in Elgin already on specific tangible goals that we have to move Elgin forward. So that ties in with communications between police and residents, building on resident-to-resident communication. And, I know this is a race for Elgin City Council, but ultimately we are facing issues at the national level too, and not necessarily national policy, but at the issue of trust. So I really want to focus on rebuilding trust between residents and their institutions. And and that also just strikes at the core of, sustainability and equity. And so I'm excited that the efforts that have been made on the council. So thank you, Corey. Thank you, Carol. A lot of people are debating what's the best way to use resources right now, but the decisions you've made, I think we have really tangible steps to grow that out. So I'm excited to, push those things forward.
Thank you, Dustin. Okay. And Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate the invite and the chance to speak to everybody. So thank all of you that are here watching on Facebook Live and everywhere else you are. Thank the other candidates for running as I continue seeing you all the time now, right? But that's kind of how it's going to be for the next few weeks, right? So, again, that's the great thing about all of our stories is that they all tend to be incredibly different, right? I've spent my entire life in public service. I'm a teacher in Elgin U46, and that's all I've done since I left college. I'm a product here of Elgin U46 as well. I'm a graduate of Elgin High School. I went to ECC as well, just like Dustin. Had phenomenal professors there, loved my time there. And again, and when I was done, this is where I wanted to live. This is where I still live. I met my wife in Elgin. I'm raising my child in Elgin. It's a great place to raise a family. But understand that all those things, I spent the last 19 years teaching, and I really had been super involved in my teaching community. And it really came down to a time where sometimes you kind of felt that the action had to be bigger than just, just that school community that I was a part of. So in 2018, I actually ran for state representative in District 65, and learned a lot in running for that. And one of the other things that I learned again too is that I think that there's this misunderstanding I think that people have with their local politics, right, and that their local government and the impact, the reach that their local government has, and really ended up having that happen to me firsthand, trying to figure out what to do with my grandpa who was suffering from dementia, reaching out to senior services here in Elgin. The people were fantastic, but also realized that we still need so much more resources and support for all of our seniors, right? Senior services, all of our social services. And that thing also taught me too that, yeah, I ran at the state level, but still it was always about wanting to do stuff in your own backyard, right? And so this was, my chance again that I really wanted to come back to my community, my Elgin community. This is the place that raised me and made me the man I am. And I believed I really needed to come back and give to the city of Elgin. And in doing so, seeing that there's been an incredible change in what we've seen in Elgin. Like I said, I grew up on Villa Street, on the east side there, just a couple of blocks from where, the Grand Victoria is now. It was definitely not there then. And where we were as a city, and the problems even, as to Dustin's idea of, 2 years ago, his plan still being very similar. I still think about the plans of trying to revitalize downtown when I was a kid, and we're still talking about that. As we continue to make progress, we continue to make this place better. We really are. And I think I want to continue that. And I think we have great people on the council now. We have two that I think that are on this call that want to be reelected. That I think that if we add more people to that mix, that we can really get real good work done, real significant work done. I too will echo the idea of sustainability and the use of renewable energy. I believe that Elgin can be a leader here as a city and continue to push out through the rest of the United States. Why our governments are not relying on renewable energy as much as they should. That's something I think we need to continue to do, along with that, the idea of sustainability. Obviously, I talked already about social services. We really need to make sure that we're beefing up and we're getting everything we can from our state. I know that our social services, much of that, those resources come from the state. We need to keep pushing to get more of that. It's from our state and from the Fed. We need to take care of our people. This is our community. These are our people. Everybody that's here, these are our people. We need to make sure that they're taken care of. Our seniors, of course, incredibly important. We also really need to think about business here. We need to make sure that we're attracting business and we're keeping business here in Elgin. So really thinking about all those things are really why I wanted to run. It really was about making Elgin better. Again, I'm not, I said this 2 years ago and I'll say it now. I'm not a politician. I'm a teacher. I'm an educator. That is my passion. I want to bring some of that experience to the council, a different voice. My mom came here as an immigrant at 19 years old with not a lot of money and not really speaking the language all that well. And to see where she is and with the work that she's put in, only one makes me work harder. So again, I think that I bring not just a different experience, a different background as far as our work experience, but ethnicity, language, culture, and understanding. And I think that's something that we need on the council.
All right, thank you. All of your answers were very thorough. I do appreciate you taking the time out to really dig into it. Now, all of you mentioned the need to look out for our people and to help the homeless and seniors, which of course you would be concerned about, and of course you would say you're concerned about. Now, what I'm looking for exactly is what specifically do you think the houseless, how the houseless can be helped in Elgin? how specifically do you see yourself helping the houseless in Elgin? And the reason I ask that is because several months ago, there was an ordinance passed stating that the city could remove a homeless person's property from public property. And of course, we know this was by discretion, but it could potentially affect Tent City. It could affect Tent City 2. It could affect, all the homeless people if the council were to decide to enforce it more strictly. So that's why I'm asking, what specifically do you think can be done to help the houseless? And this time, let's start off a little bit different. We'll start with Mr. Dixon. He raised his hand. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll start with Corey, then we'll go probably to, we'll go random. I'll let my wife pick. Go ahead, Corey.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Jeremy. I really appreciate you bringing up this subject because I don't think that it gets enough attention. So 4 years ago, really 5 years ago, when I decided that I wanted to run for Elgin City Council, and I was developing a platform of why am I going to run, right? Not just because I want to run, but because I want to actually see some changes. And the number one thing I had on my platform was homelessness or houselessness. And people would ask as I got closer and went forward in the process, people would ask, Corey, why are you talking about homelessness? That's not a problem. It's not an issue in the city. People are generally happy with the situation. And my reply was, well, it's not a good situation. As a matter of fact, it's going to get worse, and it's probably going to happen pretty quickly if we don't do something about it right now. So I'm no Nostradamus or anything like that, but I saw that this was worsening. And unfortunately, I was right. And so in my advocacy, what I began asking for and saying that what we need is a one-stop shop for our homeless community, a place where they can go into and get and be met with whatever their need is at that time. So if that's housing, if that's mental health services, other social services, food, clothing, whatever the case may be, job placement, trainings. My idea was to have a one-stop shop where they can go into and get met and be met wherever they're at. That is still very real to me as far as what we need in the city, because what we have is a revolving door that's happening. And this is not to slight other organizations for what they do. We talk about PADS or the Wayside Center, and then a lot of the work that our churches do and other organizations do, like Fuse or community meetings and the things that they talk about. But we have this revolving door where people come in and they come out, and we end up having the same number of people on the street or a higher number of people on the street than we previously had. And so in order to fix that issue, a one-stop shop, housing first type of a model would allow for us to get people off of the street right away. And then we can do the work of meeting their needs and giving them whatever it is that they need in order so that they can become self-sustaining. So that's what I envision for the city, a place where they can go in, walk into the doors and get met and have their needs met. Outside of that, everything else I really just think just falls into place. We have a bustling economy where you can find a job if you want a job in this economy in this city, right? So we have those resources. We don't have a lack of volunteers who are willing to help. We don't have a lack of organizations who are willing to do the work. So it's really just about getting them off of the street first. For those who want to be off of the street, getting them off of the street first, and then handling whatever the issue is from that point.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. It's 3 minutes. I'm just marking time. Okay. And Dustin has been chosen by the wife.
Thank you. I live downtown. I live at Chicago and Spring. So the parking deck that I think the ordinance you had mentioned was targeted at was that property. My backyard is pretty much Carlton Rogers Park. So, as somebody who's lived downtown and I worked and managed Elgin Public House, I'm very familiar with the issues that present to all the different stakeholders in the downtown area. So that's why over this past year, we saw a steady increase of people experiencing homelessness over the 4 years before the pandemic struck. And then last year, 2020, there was an increase in activity in the downtown area. So I was happy to see that there was seemingly new energy and a reemphasis on people working together. So I think everybody kind of had the shared understanding that, to Corey's point, a one-stop shop. Why is this issue manifesting? And we know this is a global, national, state. This issue is at every level. So it's not unique to Elgin, and it's a hard problem to solve because there are so many different variables at play for each individual. With that being said, I think a lot of us landed on housing first as a solution. You don't want to have strings attached to services for people who are going through the biggest struggle of their life. So to give them shelter first, help them get through the hardest part of their entire life so that they can, get things stabilized before they start working on the other areas is something that I believe in. And specifically to what's going on here in Elgin, there was a property proposed as a location for this one-stop shop. That's 600 South State Street. That location is ideal for a variety of reasons. It's right across the street from the Secretary of State building, so people can get their identification. There's an Illinois State Human Services Department that's on the active property of Elgin Mental Hospital. And in walking distance, you can take the trail to get to ECC, where you have GED programs. You have programs for certifications in welding, automotive, culinary. You have a 2-year degree. They have 4-year degrees on the premise. Language classes. So that's why we were really big advocates of that location. Obviously, with every good plan, there's also some negatives to it. The cost to rehab that building is pretty high. But that's an area, where I think that I have the background information of the different groups in town who have been trying to solve that issue. I have relationships with individuals who, are houseless and know them some of them on a first name basis and see what's going on a day-to-day level in the downtown. So I think we just need to come together. This idea has been approached before of one-stop shop, not only for, shelter and clothing and food, but I think the service organizations in town have an opportunity to collaborate and streamline their intake process as well. So just make this as easy as possible. And yeah, I mean, there's more detail we can go into, and I'm already probably over time. I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to talk about it, but we need a lot more time to talk about this specific issue and get all the stakeholders at play. But I'm happy to see that, soup kettle operators came together, first responders came together, different organizations in the community that have already been working on this came together and said, how can we solve this? So I think we're going to see massive movement in this area over the next couple of years. And again, that's the reason why it's important to get people who have a plan on city council.
Excellent. That was right. That was almost exactly the same time as Dixon. That's funny. Carol. Carol is next. You're muted, Carol.
I agree with Dustin and Corey. First of all, there is a cost involved with supporting people that are houseless at the moment and to help them with housing and medical needs and personal needs and addiction needs, etc. But there's a bigger cost to not doing anything. And that cost has been made clear to us on council in the past. There's a cost of ambulance runs and the cost of putting a policeman downtown. We had, which I thought was not a great idea, had extra policemen on the beat in downtown Elgin last summer, which cost, a tremendous amount of money when, we could have rented a hotel for everyone. And I think one of the big costs is medical costs. When people really don't have the resources themselves to get themselves to the hospital or make good, health decisions, there's a lot of people at the hospital emergency room. So we have, all understood that it's a higher cost not to do anything. And I know that there's been many organizations in Elgin over the last, since I've been on council for 8 years now, and I know Corey's been on 4, and there's a lot of organizations that are trying to do a piece part of it, but no one has pulled it together to lead it forward. And I think that's finally happening. at this moment. As we talked about, what I think really set it in motion was the ask for State Street, 600 State Street. All of a sudden, okay, here someone's making a decision to try to make a low threshold shelter to meet everyone's needs. What are we going to do? So I think that was sort of the what's the word? The catalyst that moved everything forward. So now the city staff had to take seriously, is this a location we can use? And if not, what else are we going to do? And I think PADS, as the main organization, had a change in leadership. So they see a broader need, as Corey said, to serve everyone. So I'm very optimistic, and I think we do need a team that has an understanding of the needs, and that it is not specific to Elgin, and that if we use Rockford and Aurora as they have good programs as our model, we can do something great. And it's not, I think there's this fear that if you have a great model to help people and clothe people and feed people, that homeless people will come from all over. That's not true. It's proven not to be true. And in these other communities, you have to have a relationship to someone in Elgin, or be from Elgin, or spend a lot of time here before you can be served. And if you're from somewhere else, it's not like we're going to turn you away. As Corey said, it's a one-stop shop. You come in and they'll help you find the place you need to be. So I think, yeah, we're on the right track. I think we've got some organizations, and the city is finally, I think, moving to support a clear solution.
All right, excellent. Yeah, it was a few seconds short, but still good. Complete answer. And Mr. Johnson.
All right, thank you. So there's always a good and bad in being the last one to go on a question, right? I'm going to try and do what I can with it. But no, so in this, first and foremost, I think one of the things that we tend to make mistakes as people who are in government are trying to legislate real human problems, right? And, when I hear you talking about, the order of removal of private property from public property and public grounds, again, I see that this became, well, hey, if we, legislate this issue, it'll go away. No, that when you're dealing with human beings, it doesn't work that way. If it was that easy, it wouldn't be a problem, right? So, I mean, from the standpoint, and to Carol's point, that, yeah, there are a lot of costs associated with this. And in my head, what's playing as a cost as well is that there's the cost of this, our human community and compassion, right? There's a cost to that too, right? And being able to know that we have people here in our city that are our neighbors, they are our people, they are our community, to just say, oh, well, it's on you. No, it isn't that simple either. And I think that we owe it to those people then to try and figure out something to do. And in that same vein, yeah, that there's this idea again of making sure first and foremost we have a place for them to go and a place to receive services. Okay, actual services, and again to the points that have already been made, without the strings attached, because we know that does not work, right? We've seen it over and over and over and over for I don't even know, the last 50 years, where we try to deal with the homeless issue by saying, well, you're going to do this, this, and that. You're going to jump through hoops first before you receive the services you need. That's not how this works. Sometimes without the services, they can't get what they need, right? And so first and foremost, we have to have a place. So I understand, yes, that we need to have a building, and I know that there's been the discussion of 600 South State Street. So whether that's the right place or not is still a question to be determined. But that needs input from all sorts of stakeholders, right? And so part of that is figuring out if that's the right place. But that's the first step, right? Is figuring out a place where we can actually provide these services. Secondly, we have to have landlords and so forth, if that's what we're going to do. If it's not going to be a specific building, then if we have landlords in the city that are willing to work with people in a real housing first sort of model, great. Next thing is that we need to make sure that we're getting all the funding that we can. There are funds from the federal government. I believe there's a fund of $3 billion in grant assistance for dealing with unsheltered. So again, we need to make sure we're accessing that as well to make sure that we have the resources to help all these people. So, you know, when I see that again, and I know that there's issues still, even with 600 South State Street. I know that there's others that are advocating for an expansion of a sports complex instead. And again, these are conversations that need to be had as far as where we are going to help the people that need this help. You know, I think that's at the heart of most people who want to run for their city council. That's what it is. It's about helping people. So that's really where I'm at with it.
All right, thank you. Good answers, all of you, specifically addressing what people need. Okay, next we have a question from Madeline. And Richard, you will go first since you've ended up last twice. Richard, you'll be first to answer, and go ahead, Madeline, and ask your question.
All right, hello everyone. First of all, I apologize, my video is not on with the switch to online and Jeremy telling me, just go get comfy. I may have taken that a little bit too far, but also, no one wants to see my face. Everyone wants to see the council members, or council candidates' faces. So for those of you who don't know, I am production assistant with One Source Productions, also a long time Elgin resident, although I did live outside of the city for college. But I wanted to know if each of you could speak more about just what representation looks like in, you know, in politics and from a policy standpoint. A lot of you mentioned earlier, you know, your familiarity with the Spanish-speaking population, your comfort level with that, but also speaking more to other marginalized communities that have, you know, whether historically or currently, been continue to be not as represented. Women, for example, and what that looks like in working with the citizens is also working with other members of the city, you know, who are higher up in that institutional level, if that makes sense.
All right. So thank you, Madeline, for the question. I appreciate it and welcome. I'm glad you're comfortable. So with that, so I if I understand your question correctly, I guess what you're saying is, you know, what is our, how do I say it? How do I know that I'm going to represent everybody? I guess that's is that really the gist of the question?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I guess one of the things is that, you know, I've spent my entire life, like I said, as a public servant. And one of the things that's great about the place where I work in Elgin U46, which of course I think, well, depending upon where you are, but I think that if we're looking at the actual population of the entire district, I think it's actually very representative, obviously, of what our city is like. I think one of the things that is great is that, you know, I got to spend time. I went to Elgin High School. I taught at Elgin High School. I've taught at Bartlett High School. So obviously we're looking at some different areas, but understand too that, you know, I spent my entire life then also advocating not just for my students, but again, for the Latinos like myself. You know, like I said, my mom came here. She's an immigrant. My three brothers are all married to Mexican women. I wish I spoke better Spanish. It's just conversational Spanish, but you know, mom didn't speak Spanish when we were little. I learned later on. But you know, one of the things I think that's important is having that tie to the community. I think having that tie to the community is being able to understand cultures that are different from your own. And not only that, but again, in really understanding that, you know, I think part of this too is there has to be an understanding of what is in the way. And I think in that, what I want to say is that, you know, the racial justice component is something that has to be worked on. And so for me, really also looking at policy making and anti-racist sort of policies, I think is incredibly important for me as well. And so that's where I stand with that.
Great. Thank you. I'm not sure if it's up to me now to choose who's next. I'll just go by who's on the screen next, which is Mr. Good. Your thoughts on representing all of the citizens and specifically maybe those who don't share, you know, your identities?
Yeah, so I guess the space that I've been working in for the past year, you know, I obviously value civic engagement a lot and community engagement, but specifically looking at how do you increase that in communities? How do you get the unusual suspects to the table? And what I found over the last year of doing research in other communities and trying to build tools to remedy that is, more meetings are not necessarily the answer. What we've seen with the shift to the pandemic is that, yes, we have online now and in person. And going forward, I think it's going to be important that we have online, in person, and on demand when it's appropriate. So people can just be exposed to the content in general. But really, when we talk to people across the country of like, when do you see the unusual suspects show up? They say it's at community events. So that's why I really want to focus on, we have to take a step back and look at what do we have existing in our community right now. We have neighborhood associations, we have committee opportunities, then you have like council opportunities, you have department heads. So there's all these different ways in which we can try and get representation in the structures of our community. So from a resident standpoint, I really think we should be placing an emphasis on looking at neighborhood groups and saying, are they representative of the community as it stands? And if they're not, then let's help set goals to get to that point and be doing being hyper intentional about reaching out to everyone. And if that happens to happen, if that has to happen at the block level, so be it. It makes it easy to get to every single door and make sure that you're bridging the divide between these different groups, whether it's a generational divide, if it's a technological divide. But we have to do the work. And talking to my family who came here from a different country, I'll sit down at parties and tell them what I'm doing. And sometimes they'll ask me, why are you so involved, or why are you doing this or that in your community, or it's not that important. And it's all relative to where people come from, their relationship with their civic structures and their community structures. And so getting past these different narratives or blockades and making it accessible to everyone, I think is going to be incredibly important going forward. And it's, one thing to encourage people to vote and do voter registration, but we also have to put the wealth of our community in the pockets of people who are in the community. So, again, this is a big question with a little bit of time, but, the issue of gentrification pops up all over the place. And, I think Elgin is getting to this point where we're going to start to blow up, and we have to be very intentional about how do we spread that wealth throughout our existing community and not let it be extracted from other elements coming into Elgin. So again, these are conversations that we need to have with the community at large, and make sure that it's representative. There's very specific things we can do, whether it's citizen assemblies or practicing more deliberative democracy practices, to do intentional outreach to communities and make sure that those people are there before we move forward with decision making, and not just use it as kind of like, hey, we planned this meeting, show up, it's a formality, we've already made the decision. So yeah, I guess I'm kind of ranting because this is the area I spend a lot of my time on. But again, thank you for the question. It's very important.
Excellent, thank you. And yeah, I recognize it is a big question, not enough time, but thank you all so much for indulging me in that question. Next up on my screen, at least, I have Mr. Dixon.
Thank you, Madeline, for the question. Growing up, my mother would tell me, Corey, and it would be at a park or something like that. You see those kids out there? See those kids, none of those kids are better than you. But also know that you're not better than any of those kids. And it'll be a vast array of kids from all different backgrounds. And so I grew up in a household where I was taught that we're all equal and we should be treated as such. I have 3 daughters. My oldest daughter is actually in Beacon Academy at South Elgin High School. But when she first started elementary school, I would tell her, when you go to school today, talk to somebody you haven't talked to before, another student that is. Make a conversation with someone that you may not have, it doesn't seem like you have much in common with them. Because it was me trying to implant that same spirit that my mother implanted in me. And it's because of that I'm a bridge builder. It doesn't matter what room I find myself in, no matter what a person's background, no matter what a person identifies as. I'm comfortable because I've come up with and have grown up with a mindset that we're all equal at the end of the day. And so when it comes to fighting for issues that are concerning social justice, I have a very special connection to that because I still keep in my mind what my mother taught me at a very young age. And so all of the community work that I do, through the boards and commissions that I serve on or have served on, through the community work when it comes to the back to school event. Those events, that event and those boards serve people from all different backgrounds. And I'm really proud of that work because it's me following what was initially instilled in me by my mother and my parents and my family as a whole. And so really I'm about that work of bridge building. And when I am on the dais and I'm contemplating policies and voting on things, I'm thinking about how's it going to affect the person that maybe people right now are not considering. And so I'm thinking things through to make sure that those rules and those ordinances and those codes are equitable for all, and that it doesn't lean more towards one direction than the other. But with that being said, there are obviously some policy issues that need to be addressed and that do need to lean a certain way in order to protect certain classes and groups. And so for that, I'm all on board. And that leads us to social justice and equity work that I've been doing, that Carol has been doing, that Richard and Dustin truly do believe in. And so, that is the work that I want to be able to continue doing if reelected here and having another 4 years.
Great, thank you. And lucky last,
Yeah.
Rauschenberger.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll also tell a little story. I grew up here in Elgin and left when I was like 18, 19, 20 to go to college. And even though I came back every once in a while because my family remained here, I went to live, I went to school down at U of I, went to school out in Arizona. I lived in Europe. I lived in Michigan for 10 years. I lived in Asia. So I, had an opportunity to see the world, and I adopted my husband and I adopted 2 children from Cambodia, and at the time we adopted them, we lived in this very sweet small town in Michigan, and just outside Ann Arbor. But I realized very quickly that it was a very homogeneous community where people did not have experience of people that were different from them or had different opinions from them. And I saw the future of my kids in that town, and I thought, what, it's not going to be good for them. They're always going to be seen as a little different. And it was about that opportunity in my life and my husband's life that we could make a change. And we decided to move back to Elgin, one of the reasons being that my family was there and my mother was getting on in years. But I will tell you, it was the best thing I did for I have 3 children, but the 2 of them that have a Southeast Asian background, they came to U46, to a neighborhood with people from, first of all, different economic, different religion, different cultural backgrounds, different colors. And it was, when people say U46 or Elgin is not a great place for kids, it is a wonderful place. It is a reflection, really, of the world. And so I would say that I bring some empathy from my life experience and my family. And as a woman, I think that I try to see the world from all different angles. And, as I said, I live in a neighborhood where you see all my neighbors come from a different place and, again, economic background. So I do try to take that all in consideration as I make decisions on behalf. And the last thing I'm going to say is we do have, I've worked hard in these last few years to try to elevate the level of our citizen commissions. Dustin knows how, as he being on the Strategic Commission, Corey's with the Human Relations Commissions, I'm on the Sustainability. These are citizens, and the citizens are supposed to be giving us policy advice. And I think it's not taken seriously enough by the city staff or council at this moment in time. And I would like to elevate, because those, we do try to make those commissions and boards diverse and to represent. And they're supposed to, I know we need to be talking to the citizens in the community too, but their kind of job is to help us with policy. So that's another way I feel like we can best represent by listening to our own citizens and our own citizen commissions.
All right, thank you. All right, that's good. I do have a question from the public. This comes from a friend of mine, Pat Popper, and he is asking, well, he has several questions, but I'm not going to read the second one. What do you want to see in Elgin within 5 years? And we'll start with Dustin.
Oh, so 5 years. I mean, as you can tell, I'm focused on social infrastructure, and it kind of touches on a few different components that we've talked about. What Carol was just talking about with the uplifting committees, that could be considered a stepping stone within our social structure. Our social infrastructure. So what I would love to see is that Elgin becomes very connected with each other, resident to resident, and that people like ourselves who have had engagement in the community, whether it be through committees, opportunities at ECC, U46, with the city, on neighborhood associations, whatever it is, that we create a pipeline. We make it really easy for residents to get engaged, whether it's just a simple activity that they want to do maybe once a year, once a month, or if they want to spend dedicated time routinely, that we have all of this charted out, all these opportunities charted out and easy for residents to plug into. I alluded to a little bit, I used to work in landscaping. More specifically, I worked in native landscape restoration, and I worked on organic farms. I was the chair of the farmer market committee here in Elgin. So I have a huge bend that way. Big term plans, I would love to see a partnership with ECC where we really expand urban ag. And, ECC already has their culinary program. We have cafeterias at U46 schools, ECC, hospitals. We had a food hub that was supposed to get up and running, about 4 years ago, and it's not quite there yet. So I really would love, and again, I'm not going to make such a huge decision like this without the mandate of the public, so I want to hear the public's feedback. But I would love for Elgin to become known for a destination of quality food, food that's grown locally, food that's put into our institutions that's high quality, and food that's put into our restaurants that's high quality. And I think that, again, that ties into this larger effort of building trust in a community, because there's a lot of people who are way smarter than me and who have way more experience who have concluded that really the best way to try and remedy some of the social ills that we have right now is simply meeting together to eat food. And when we share food together, share music together, we realize that we're all very common and we're all trying to just make a better life for ourselves and our families. So I really want to build just a robust community environment here in Elgin. I've made the goal of I want to see more block parties. I'm working diligently to make that happen. I want to see a cleaner city. We're doing that with pickup events. I want to see some, this is kind of a crazy idea, not even crazy, but just have more tournaments, right? Like Durant 3 basketball, let's have bag tournaments that are, annually throughout the city just to build the sense of neighborhood camaraderie. So I guess you get my drift, you know where I'm heading. If you have ideas, reach out. But yeah, that's, I guess, 5-year plan. And I'm skipping over all the things like building digital infrastructure and making sure we have a balanced budget and growing the tax base. You guys all hear about that a lot. You can check out my platform and see the nitty gritty details of those things. But I wanted to take this opportunity to deviate a little bit. So thank you for that question. Pat Popper, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dustin. And that was right on time. We are going to start shortening up the answers to 2 minutes. He just went about 2:15. So that was good. I don't know how much longer past 8 you guys are willing to stay, but I don't want to obligate anybody. I've put you through enough already. So we will go next. Let's see. Good. Let's go next to Richard Johnson. Looks like he has something to say.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go. Yeah. And I think it's great to be able to, to Dustin's point and, getting away from just the idea of, budgets and all those things are incredibly important and we'll take those seriously. But I think the idea is that when we start to see where we want to go in 5 years, the things that's popping into my head right away is What I want to see is a thriving downtown. I want to see a real corridor then between what's on the west side of Elgin that goes into the east side, into downtown. I live on the west side, and that's the thing is I really hate that. I shouldn't say I hate. I don't like that my neighbors are going to Algonquin and St. Charles and Geneva. I want them going to Elgin because it's beautiful. It's great. There are great restaurants, and I want to continue that. And again, to further on with what Dustin is saying too, I really wanted to see an entertainment district right there in downtown, to have those great restaurants again with real, actual, sustainable food, ones that are farm to table sort of locally sourced foods, great food, and again, we tend to settle our differences by breaking bread with one another. So I think that's incredibly important. But bringing people to our downtown. I really want to see solar and wind usage as much as we can with all of our government buildings. Again, this is where we can be a leader, and I think we need to do that. And again, in the next 5 years, I'd love to see that happen. Again, and also, it shouldn't take 5 years, but I want to see a dispensary in downtown Elgin as well. We have all these places that have them. Why it is we don't have that in Elgin doesn't make any sense. So that's one that can take a lot less than 5 years. But again, a real actual conduit that goes between East and West. And again, I think to that point, in being able to bring our communities together, that this isn't the East side and the West side, even though I know we'd love to make that distinction, but it is Elgin, and we're all Elgin residents. We are the same, and I think having those community events and being able to bring people together, I think is incredibly important. And so I think that if we had a thriving downtown with that kind of entertainment district, we could do that, and we could bring people from all over the area to our downtown, and I think it'd be great. That's what I want.
Excellent. And Corey?
Can I just copy and paste Richard's answer?
Yeah, that is acceptable.
He literally hit everything I was going to say. So I hate to sound redundant, but I'm a West Side resident, and I think about those same things. Our residents on this side of town normally go up and down Randall Road. Now, there are some who do go to the east side. Don't get me wrong. There are some who also go to the downtown. Don't get me wrong. I'm one of them. My family are one of those. I have friends and family on this side that also travel to downtown and onto the west side too. So, but we do need something that's going to bring us all together. And so that is an expansion of downtown, of shops and stores on the street level that are going to attract people to come down there. So a marijuana dispensary is absolutely something that is going to bring people downtown. Maybe not families exactly, right? But it creates a walking atmosphere. You couple that with the addition of the 40-unit building that's actually being redeveloped right now. That creates a walkable community. You talk about the stores that are just popping up. So what's the restaurant? Bees, Puerto Rican cuisine that's coming downtown. I mean, like if there are restaurants like that, that's awesome. And it does a lot for our downtown. And so one, I would like to see something be done on the west side of town that's going to bring people on to downtown. But before I even go any further in that, a lot of people, West Side residents, they don't use city facilities for anything. So we have the downtown center of Elgin, that is downtown rather, but we don't have any facility on the west side of town for people to use. So they end up going elsewhere. And I think that's the number one thing really when it comes to our city. We want to keep people here. We want to keep our dollars here to be able to have a sustainable economy. So we have to provide services and amenities here in our city that's going to stop people from leaving our community and going and spending those tax dollars, spending those dollars elsewhere. The next thing where I think that we need to pivot to is when it comes to economic development on the outskirts. So even just outside of the downtown, we have a great manufacturers around the city. But those manufacturers, what they're telling us is that people are aging out. They're retiring. They have job shortage. They can't find enough people to go into those fields with technology continuing to change. And so I see us in the next 5 years, if we can start implementing fiber optic cables throughout our city and in different hubs, that we can create a technology center that's not just based on the manufacturing, but getting ready for the next generation of manufacturers. And then also too, that's going to bring more businesses here. So those are a few things that that I really care about, and that's why I see us going in the next 5 years.
All right, thank you. You did go over, so you'll be penalized 1 minute later. That's all right. Carol,
I need a buzzer or something like that.
No doubt. Yeah, there was actually a buzzer prepared for the library session, but anyway, Carol.
Okay. I think we have a lot of ideas what we'd like to do in the next 5 years. I'll be specific. I'm hoping that we have a new resilience or sustainability plan that's being implemented. So I know we've been talking about that for a few years, and it needs to get done and implemented in 5 years, that we'll be seeing the benefits of a sustainability plan. I would like to see Elgin work toward really attracting clean energy jobs, IT job businesses, maybe medical, industrial sort of jobs, that we have a specific plan. We still are a great location. I just don't want transportation companies and warehouses only. I think we need a good plan, and I want to see some of those businesses come to Elgin, and we need to work toward doing that. And like everybody else, I would like to see our downtown become what it truly could be. We're lucky that, I don't think Randall Road will ever become a place where people are nostalgic for, but I think downtown Elgin is a place that still has a sense of place, that still has the opportunity with, historic buildings and walkability and things like that. The city sits upon many empty parcels, and we need to be proactive and intentional about what we want to build in downtown Elgin. Destin would agree with me on this, and Corey, I'm sure, as well. Parking lots don't bring life and business and people. You know what? Downtowns need to be dense and full of art and full of good food, as everyone said. And we've got, thank goodness, we're not a city that let our city hall and the post office go out to the outskirts. We still have our civic downtown. We need to build upon that and make it a place that people want to be and interact. Because, in the end, art and food and interaction with people is what we all makes the city a great place. So that's my thoughts.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate your answers. And it's funny you all mentioned Randall. People travel up and down Randall, north and south instead of east and west, because actually maybe 3 years ago, I'm not sure exactly. It was a couple years ago. Anyway, I did a video with a real estate tour. I don't think this was part of the city. It was just something that someone asked me to do with the real estate company. Oh, sorry, my lights just went out. But so it was a tour that they asked me to do with the real estate company, and we toured mostly 60124. And what I found the real estate agent saying was that Randall was going to be the new center of Elgin, and it greatly upset me. I had to stop recording. But yeah, so it was that kind of attitude. And this was a bus full of real estate agents, and the guy leading it stated that he thought Randall would be the center of Elgin, as if the rest of this didn't exist. So this was 4 years ago, and now 60124 is built up and all that. So I'm glad to see you both mention that it's kind of divided a little bit, and where people just kind of go north and south. So it makes me glad that you're aware of it, at least. Last question. Go ahead.
Can I make a quick comment in the middle?
Yeah.
So we talked about what we wanted to see in 5 years, and I didn't, and my colleagues didn't do. I guess I wondered what people's thoughts are about the what's the word? The sports complex, of which I'm not that enamored with. But I would like to hear my colleagues' comments on that.
If everybody's okay with a few extra minutes, I only have one more question that actually came from my wife. And if you guys are okay with a few extra minutes, we can continue. I don't want to force anybody, though.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, so I guess, I'll pick up on that, Carol, a little bit. I have the knowledge that I have is, looking at the plan that the city put together for the sports complex, and seeing it on paper, it seems like the beginning stages of it. And I was introduced to that plan because of the work over the summer looking at the 600 South State Street project. So it just so happens that while being introduced to that plan, I came across this price tag of around $34 million for the sports complex expansion. There's a similar similarly priced project going on in the Auburn Gresham community in Chicago. That was for an urban ag development. So again, I've said that that's kind of one of my leans. I think that's very important for communities to secure good food. So I say that because that's an idea that I have in my head. However, I think a project of that scope, again, needs to be pushed out to the community to have really intentional conversations around it. And, in talking with people who've worked at the sports complex, a question I have is, how many jobs do you think that would bring? Expansion. And those jobs would be seasonal, right? So is Elgin in 5 years going to be known as the top sports destination? I don't know. The way I look at it is over the next 5 years, there's going to be a big disparity between communities that really accelerate and ones that kind of fade away. So, to kind of the question before this, it's going to take expanding the tax base, becoming a digitally competent community, and then having an identity component tied into it. So I'm a big fan of chasing like the innovation side of things, but also the really old school, tried and true practices that have happened in communities and civilization forever, which comes down to growing your food. And so that's kind of my thoughts on the sports complex expansion, is maybe we could have a different plan. And yeah, I have other thoughts on that too, but I don't want to chew up all this time. But I think, the golf course there, I mean, it used to be a farm. What would ECC think about an expansion there? Is there an opportunity to tie in job training programs to a different $35 million project? Yeah. Thank you for that tag along, though. That's an important project that'll be coming down the pipeline.
Yeah.
I'll
Richard
answer
Corey?
next.
Yeah.
I'll go next. Elgin is a city, and I think that sometimes we have conversations as if we're a suburb, and we're not a suburb, obviously, right? But we're a city surrounded by all of these suburbs. And so let's talk about the sports complex. There's a sports complex actually in Rockford. And that Rockford complex is an economic driver for that community. They have tons of sports teams that go to that sports complex for various things, mainly soccer. And so that is an economic driver for that, and I don't take that lightly. And Rockford is also a city, but they're also surrounded by suburbs very similar to ours. So when we talk about like what should we be doing with that space, we have to think about it really in the next 15, 20 years and not just 5 years, right? That's a little bit too quick of a turnaround time. But when I think about that space in the next 15 to 20 years, that green space becomes even more valuable as we continue to expand on the west side past Randall Road. You can make and create a lot of things, but you can't make any more land. And so doing something when it comes to community gardens, sports complex, maybe there's some combination, and I'm familiar with the plan, very familiar with the plan that Dustin referenced. I think probably that plan is outdated at this point. I think we have to reimagine and rethink what we could do with that space, because like I said, we can't create more land. So yes, I like the idea of expanding our sports complex. and creating that, having that, making that an economic driver. But I also definitely understand the importance of having part of that green space there for the community to be able to garden on or to do other things that will help our neighborhoods and our city be more sustainable.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Carol. Well, and this is the thing, is that first and foremost, as I'm going to have to defer somewhat to most of your knowledge here. I'm familiar with the plan, but I am not intimately familiar with the plan. But as far as just the beginning, I mean, my first kind of inclinations here are, in the plan for the expansion. I just get to the first question, is that what is the use? I mean, the expansion generally is for when you have something that, needs that extra space, right? And I don't know that the need is there in the first place. The other thing too, again, to the point, is what is really, what is the benefit to the community? What is the benefit as far as, as again, economics have to come into play here, especially when you're investing $34 million. There has to be some sort of investment that comes back. And it could be in the form of people, in that idea of human capital, right? And it sometimes, and hopefully also results in tax dollars as well. But I think that before making that kind of decision, and again, really, I think that that's something that we really all have to think about, is really looking, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years down the road as a council, because I think we have to be more visionary, not just, reactionary, right? And so what is, where is it that we're trying to go with that? And again, and even with still, we know that there's still this question of the unsheltered in the 600 South State Street, right? So I think this isn't an easy question to look at. And I think that we still need some more of that feedback from our stakeholders and see what's really most beneficial for the people of Elgin. So I can't say for sure right now, but like I said, those are my first reactions, at least.
Yeah, thank you for answering that question. Again, I feel very similar. It's probably the prices are different. It's a plan that was done some years ago before I think I was on the council. So it's a thing, but it's not on top of my list of, as I said, none of us said in, 5 years we want to see the sports complex. So I think this is the opportunity to rethink and envision what Elgin needs and wants to be. So I agree with everyone's answer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. This almost turned into a debate. Well, the next question actually is, you've all kind of mentioned
They're all wrong. They're all wrong, Jeremy.
Right. Let's get a real debate going.
Right.
No, the next question actually, you guys kind of spoke on it a little bit already. And I know your opinions of it because I've met all of you except for Richard Johnson thousands of times. So we got to hang out more, Richard. But a question comes from my wife. And Carol, you already mentioned a bit of it. But how important is it to you that Elgin becomes an environmentally sustainable city? That is from Linda Hayes.
I think we're up there, right?
I'll take this one. Can I go on this one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Start with Richard, since I know you the least. Go ahead, buddy. How important is it for you that Elgin becomes an environmentally sustainable city? We're talking green buildings, solar panels, all that.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Linda. I appreciate it. And yeah, Jeremy, we do have to hang out for sure. So with that being said, what I'll tell you is that one of the first things that happened when I decided I wanted to run is my wife, because I had to ask her, of course, if it was okay, right? I mean, it's a family decision. There's a lot of time, a lot of dad being gone and so forth, right? So you had that conversation, right? And the thing honestly she said to me, this is true, I'm not making this up. Fine, but if you don't get solar panels on all those buildings, you're in trouble. So, actually, it's not even it is my idea as well. But no, my wife did say that, and that is absolutely true. You can ask her that, and I say that in jest, but it is true too. And I agree that, yeah, and I touched upon it before. And for me, it's incredibly important. The environment, in my state run, there was a lot of conversation about that. And I was supported by the Sierra Club, that when it comes to the use of renewable energy. And to Carol's earlier point, not only do we need to do it and adopt it as a city, And again, as I've already said multiple times, that as a city, we need to be leaders in this area, but we also then need to make sure we're bringing business that does the same thing and uses those practices as well. And that's what we should be doing. I don't think that it's not a question, right? That I think that we owe it not just to ourselves, but again, there's tax incentives and tax, and there's savings for our own people here too, our citizens in Elgin, right? But again, too, when I said we got to be visionary, we got to think down the road that we need to leave this a better place for our children. And if we're not going to do it and do it the right way and make sure that we're not, continuing to leave this carbon footprint for future generations, then we're doing something wrong. And if we're not looking into that, and if we're not doing that, it has to be, and it can't be talk. We have to do this. So again, for me, that if every city building in Elgin was using solar energy, yes, I'd be all for it. Absolutely. Is there an upfront cost? Absolutely. Is there a savings in the end? And is there the idea of, again, doing what's right for ourselves, our environment, our families, our future generations? Yes, absolutely. So 100% yes.
All right. And Mr. Good, I see your head bobbing.
Yeah. So, this has been something that I've cared about for a very long time. Starting back at ECC, it was, I tried to find everything I could on campus to exercise my interest in, and this is the problem, is like sustainability. It's hard to talk about in general because the word has been weaponized so many times over. Environmental stewardship, sustainability, sustained prosperity, whatever you want to say. What we're trying to do is build a better world for the next generation. And this is going to be a generational battle, right? This isn't going to be solved in 4-year term or a 5-year plan or even a 25-year comprehensive plan. And, you have this as a global, national, state, local issue. And so we have to do our part, right? And Elgin became the second community behind only Chicago to pass a climate emergency resolution. And then what does that mean? So again, over this past year of doing my research of different municipalities, one of the areas that we focus on was that list of communities who had signed that agreement. And so you see that some communities have the agreement, but they don't have a staff person in place. Some people have a staff person in place, but they don't have a committee. So we just have to get the very structure in place to be able to address this in general. Like I know the committee started, I think, in 2008, put together the plan. The plan needs to be updated, what Carol had alluded to already. While I was at ECC, started the Student Organization of Sustainability. So again, there's things that I haven't brought up tonight because I've talked about them so much, like the downtown. I'm on the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I care deeply about our environment. And I know, though, that before you can get to some of the big items, like renewable energy, you have to make sure people are taken care of. And so the dramatic example was the pandemic. And the dramatic example was what happened in Texas recently. And so we need to make sure that our residents, can take care of each other when institutions are not able to take care of them. So in an ideal world, each property is capturing its own energy, water, as much as it can and storing them. And then we have a robust local food network. So I think, again, this is a humongous question, a humongous issue, but rest assured, it is something that I care deeply about because I know that Elgin's roots, before colonizers got here, Elgin was picked for a reason, for people to congregate around, and it's because of our natural resources. I know that when it was colonized, it was because of the natural resources. You look at around the country, things pop up on waterfronts, rivers, lakes, because there's a reason for transportation and vitality to your own livelihood. So, I can't remember if the question was, what was the question? I was going to say, because I know Corey's coming up. I don't know if it was to be a steward of the environment or a leader in the environment, but
you have answered it, sir, and pointed to the problem of the colonizers. Okay, Mr. Dixon, I'll reread the question just so we're all on the same page. How important is it to you that Elgin becomes an environmentally sustainable city?
I think it's super important. It's super important to me. Before we actually pass the climate change resolution, I had brought up earlier that I had pushed for in securing the land for the East Side Recreational Garden. That was important. I also voted in favor of the actual ordinance declaring climate emergency too as well. Also voted in favor of and advocated for a sustainability officer too as well. All of those things are really important in going the direction of making sure that sustainability, environmental sustainability, is a top priority. And for me, just to take it even a little bit step further, when we talk about the ecological integrity, we have to make sure that we continue to have the basics in place. That's clean air, that's clean water, uncontaminated food. So if we're able to, grow our own foods in our neighborhoods, that's making a neighborhood and therefore the city even more sustainable. Protecting the biodiversity of our wooded and our wetlands areas that we have, that's super important. Conserving as much of energy as possible, and so Richard actually brought up the use of solar panels, and solar panels are an investment, but there are a lot of great programs out there that will allow for you to get solar panels on public buildings for little to no cost up front. And so we have to explore these ideas and these ways to which we can figure out how to become more and more and more sustainable. And initially, it is an investment a lot of times, but it pays off down the road. And that's why when you're on city council or you're wanting to be on city council, you have to think about what those issues and what those decisions are going to be 15, 20, 30 years down the road. So you have to kind of see around the corner. And so when it comes to sustainability, we have to make those investments now where we can, and then make sure that we're making a concerted effort and being intentional about making those changes now, a little at a time, until we get to where we need to be.
All right, thank you. And Carol, I know you've already mentioned it, but how important is it to you that Elgin becomes an environmentally sustainable city?
Yeah, of course, one of my top priorities. And I think a couple things. I'm of the age, which I hate to admit, but I was in high school when the first Earth Day was declared. And sadly, I'm not so sure anything's happened in those years that we have moved forward, but certainly not enough. That's for sure. And I think it's sustainability and what we're doing to our environment is on my radar every single day. You can ask my kids. And secondly, I think Elgin's moving in the right direction. We've had support from not everybody on our council, I have to admit, but most people on our council, Corey and Tish and Valdemar and John Steffen. They see the necessity and the ability for a city to make a difference. It's sort of like, what can little Elgin do? No, we can be one of the leaders. As Dustin said, we are one of the leaders. We passed emergency climate change, resolution, meaning that we are serious about this. And to follow up, as we mentioned, we're hiring a sustainability coordinator, and we're having an energy audit done, a citywide energy audit, so that we have a baseline to work toward. Those are big steps for a community to take, and I'm proud of Elgin that they're doing that. And the final thing, I think every sustainability commission should be on the bottom line of anything that happens in Elgin. Any decision we make is a sustainable decision, really. And even so far as, we talked about putting crematorium in Elgin. Well, crematoriums, there are issues with that. First of all, it takes a lot of energy. It's a very, it really eats energy, a crematorium. And second of all, the emissions. So I think that should have been, for example, passed by the Sustainability Commission before after the Planning Commission or with the Planning Commission. When we put a stop sign in, what does that do to traffic and emissions and, traffic calming, just about, again, a new parking lot. Anything we do has a sustainable outcome. And so I think, again, it needs to be central to everything the city does, and it should be a thought process to everything the city does. So that's how important I think it is.
Excellent. Thank you. And this will be the last question because it is approaching 8:30, and I know families are waiting, including my 4-year-old. Last question comes from a phenomenal documentarian, Mario Contreras, and we'll end on a positive note. He says, what, in your mind, is Elgin's greatest strength? And we'll start with Corey Dixon. And you only have 90 seconds, Mr. Dixon, from your previous minute docking. No, I'm joking. Just what is Elgin's greatest strength?
No, it's all good. My answer is short. Our greatest strength is our people. Our greatest strength is our diversity of people. Growing up here in Elgin, I was born and raised here in Elgin, graduated from Elgin High School, and then went off to college, and have pretty much been back ever since grad school. The people here are what makes this city what it is. Because I came from an environment where it was very diverse, I've always felt equipped, no matter what room I go into, to be able to relate, to be able to make conversation. And a lot of that comes from my background of being raised here in this city. So you are conscious of of our immigrant community. You're conscious of people coming from other pockets of cultural existence and different ways that their families operate, and all of that has compiled into what really Corey Dixon is when it comes to how I relate to people. So for me, our diversity, and what I like to say about our diversity, is that it's the jewel of our city. It's one of the most important aspects of our city, bar none. We have great people that come from diverse backgrounds. And then we also have, and those same people care and they love this city, and they are lifelong residents, a lot of them too. And so they want to see what's best. And so that, to me, is the most important thing.
Excellent. Thank you.
Gotta love
Right
the people,
time.
man.
Mr. Good, what, in your mind, is Elgin's greatest strength?
Yeah, and thanks, Mario, for this question. I echo a lot of what Corey said. We're a diverse city, right? So we're diverse, and we are a city. So you have the great people that currently live here that make up this city, but you have all the people that came before us that put all the tools and resources in place for us to thrive. The educational institutions, our healthcare institutions. We obviously have the natural resources. So I think that, again, going forward in the long term, we've touched on a couple of the technical things that, cities are doing, whether it's expanding your high-speed internet access or building out a specific industry. But I do think that diverse communities are going to be the ones that thrive going forward. And again, I look to nature a lot of times, because you can learn a lot by doing that. And so you look at, parts of landscapes that are monocultures, they're not productive, and they take a lot of external inputs to make them survive. Whereas you look at some of the, like a forest, there's all different types of life forms working together. And that same thing holds true for humans. I know America's a unique place, and we have a lot of different elements at play, but I think the communities that sit down and, again, realize that we're all coming from the same point, we all want the same things. We might look and talk different, but we're all in this together. I think communities that invest in getting past that are the ones that ultimately end up thriving. And that's been true in places all over the world. And I think that Elgin is in that great spot. We're a tier 2 city. We're small enough to where we can get in contact with our city council members. We can get in contact with presidents of companies. So we have a lot of flexibility in terms of piloting whatever it is that humans want to work on. But we are large enough to test pilot those ideas. So I think Elgin's in a great space right now in terms of its size, its diversity, its natural resources. So I think that would round up my answer.
Excellent. And I see you, Mr. Johnson. I see you are ready. Go ahead. What, in your mind, is Elgin's greatest strength?
I'm always ready. So I'm going to totally cheat on the question, and I'm going to say that it isn't just one thing. I'm going to say that, Corey's right. It is our people. It is our arts. It is our culture. It is our diversity. It is our diversity of people, of thought, of ethnicity, of tradition, of custom, of languages. That is what's great. right? There's so many good things about, what I love about Elgin. And yeah, I was lucky to grow up here. I really do believe that. And growing to a high school that was just not a homogenous one where everybody was the same, we just weren't. And it really was, especially for someone like me growing up. Like I said, my mom, if you saw my mom, she's about 4'11", tiny little Ecuadorian woman. And my dad is, my dad was a blonde hair, blue eyed white guy. So to see that too, first off, right. And only in Elgin, right, that we have that happen. Right. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about that. Right. And, my dad, loving my mom so much and the culture so much, he taught himself Spanish. My dad didn't even finish, high school. My dad dropped out after 8th grade, but he taught just by being around my mom and her family, he taught himself Spanish because that was important. He was into to all the other things that were part of that culture. And that is the great thing. So like I said, it is the people, it is the difference of languages and culture. One of my best friends growing up was Laotian. This is what makes this great, is that it does allow us to have so many different experiences and be able to meet different people and understand that, yes, we're all still human. We all still bleed the same blood. We're the same people. Not everybody, I guess, is lucky enough to be like us, to be in this city and have that kind of experience and that kind of diversity, to experience the different language and cultures and foods and everything else that is great about Elgin. And the arts. The arts are amazing. How are we that lucky to have such a state-of-the-art library, one of the best symphonies in the world? We have a thriving art scene here. Think about the other thing too, when I think about Elgin, is just that idea of love too. Come on, look at what they did during the COVID crisis, right? The art that they put together during that time. That's the city that I love. And that's the city showing love for its own community. That's what's great about Elgin.
All right. And Carol, I'd be surprised if you didn't take all of their answers.
Yeah.
What do you think is Elgin's greatest strength?
We all agree. Diversity is number one. I mean, the fact that we live in this community with all sorts of people. So I will say that is number one, and echo what everyone says. I love Dustin's comment about a monoculture in nature does not thrive. You need a diverse ecology to be sustain itself and go into the future. So that's for sure. And then I would second that. Richard also said, I would say that our arts community is really something that attracted me a lot to Elgin. And we have great performing arts and great visual arts. And, we have a community that's known for arts outside the community. And then I'll go to this third best thing, I think, is we have the bones of a beautiful downtown. So those are my three.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have a few more questions, but I'm not going to ask them because it is past 8:30, and I'm sure you guys have other things to do. But don't forget, I am available for any commercials or anything you guys want to shoot. I'm also going to make the offer to the people who could not make it. And this is, of course, free. I won't come inside your house. Sorry. But I will shoot it outside your house. Sorry, until I get my vaccine. I'm not going to anybody's house. But yeah, I will meet you somewhere outside your house, or I'm willing to go to the library. Anything anybody wants. So that's available for all the candidates. Just contact me. Let me know. I think that concludes our first Elgin City Council candidate Q&A session hosted by One Source Productions.